Like we have just recently, one of our students bought a property that the person had bought in 2006 for over $100,000, and they sold it to them for $7,000.
Welcome to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast, your guide in the race to financial freedom through real estate investing and sound financial practices. This podcast is for anyone interested in learning more about real estate investing, personal finances, and a new take on traditional retirement. Now, here are your hosts, Larry Fierro and Mike Moe.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast, your guide on the race to financial freedom through real estate investing and sound financial practices. My name is Mike Moe, one of the hosts of the show, joined today with Larry Fierro. What's up, man?
Oh, not much, Mike. Not much. I'm not in my usual podcast studio. I'm actually out of town for a food show for my regular full-time job. So that's definitely one of the perks of working full-time. I get to go out and eat a bunch of food for free. So that's
Heck
cool.
Yeah, you're taking the podcast on the road, dude.
Yes, the podcast is on location in Buffalo at a casino. Don't tell anybody. I won a couple bucks.
Yes, that's awesome, man. I wish I could be right there on the blackjack tables with you, but
yeah. Oh,
unfortunately not.
That's hardcore. I stick with the slots.
Nice. Yeah,
free place.
All right, dude. We got a good one. This is a very, very awesome interview that I gotta admit, no fault, no disrespect to Mr. Jack Bosch, who this interview is with. I had some assumptions about this topic that we went into, and let's just say Jack completely dismantled my assumptions about the subject that we're going to talk about in depth here in a little bit.
Yeah, I was very curious to listen to what he had to say, and I was on the fence, but he converted me over to his way of thinking. I got to tell you, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yep, good old land flipping. Who would have known? Who would have thunk that you can actually get cash flow out of land flipping? So more on that to come. But before we get into the interview, you want to hit us with the little warm up we got?
Yeah, the warm up today, we're going to do seller financing. And what seller financing is, a real estate agreement in which the seller handles the mortgage process instead of a financial institution. Instead of applying for a conventional bank mortgage, the buyer signs a mortgage with the seller. Owner financing is another name for seller financing.
Yeah, and this sounds complicated, but in essence, it's just whoever is selling the asset, the land, the property, whatever it is, essentially becomes the bank. Instead of you going to a lender and getting a loan and having them buy the property and you paying them, you're essentially just paying the owner installments and interest every, whatever terms you agree to, you pay them every month instead of the bank. So it sounds a lot more complicated than it is. But to quote Jack Bosch in this episode, he said, in his strategy, you don't have to deal with the bank, you become the bank. So it's really a really powerful tool.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite financing methods. You're limited by the number of mortgages you can get in multifamily. And I've actually built my entire portfolio using owner financing, where the people that own the properties finance me, and I've achieved financial freedom through owner financing. So this is one of my favorite methods.
Heck yeah. I'm surprised we haven't defined it yet. We've talked about the subject quite a bit in the last couple of episodes, and glad we finally got around to defining it.
Absolutely. So that's, in case you guys ever wanted to know, that's what it's at.
Perfect. All right, man. Anything else before we get into the interview with Mr. Jack Bosch?
Let's bring Jack on. This is good stuff coming up.
Yeah, cool. All right, Mr. Jack Bosch. Welcome to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast, man. How you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm doing great. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Larry.
Glad to have you here, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, super excited to get into this one, Jack. Would you mind, before we kind of dive into the details, give the folks a background of who you are and kind of your backstory and what you're doing now?
Sure. So we, when I say we, I tend to speak in plural because my wife and I run our business together, have been running this business together for the last 18 years. And she can do everything I can do or more, probably. So when I say we, I refer to both of us and our team, obviously, because neither of us could have done everything we have done if it wouldn't have been for our team. So originally, you can tell from my accent, I'm from Germany. I'm not American. I am American now. I'm an American citizen, but I came from Germany 23 and a half years ago or so. We're going on 24 years ago. To literally, I came here to the country to literally just finish my college degree, put my stuff in my parents' basement, said like, see you in a year. Had my job lined up in Germany, had everything lined up. And then an interesting thing happened. I fell in love with this country. And also I came across this lovely young lady that is now my wife of 18 years. So, 3 weeks into being here, it's like right away, it's like, ooh, who is that? And then that's it, right?
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be, exactly. On top of it, in this small university in the middle of the cornfields of Illinois. So it's really not just like, it's almost like was truly meant to be. So there we go. She's from Honduras, Central America. So she's an immigrant herself. I'm from Germany. We came here, we decided to stay here. We got jobs. We didn't like our jobs. I worked in a software company as a business analyst, 100% travel, 100% staying in some mediocre hotels on the outskirts of town. So it's not the Ritz in downtown where it's cool and fashionly. It's like in the outskirts of town in the Holiday Inn Express and so on. So it wasn't as glamorous as it sounds initially. And he said like, oh, you're traveling and for business and stuff. And after a few years, I was like, 2-3 years, I was like, I've had that, but I couldn't quit. I couldn't quit because I was having the green card process that takes 5.5 years. So over the course, so we figured if this is already happening, we can't already go anywhere. Let's figure out what a plan B that we can make into a plan A when the time comes that we can quit our jobs because we got the green card. And that's what we did. So we figured out this concept of real estate investing through land flipping. So land flipping is the exact same thing as house flipping, just without the hassles that come with houses. So therefore, you can wholesale a piece of land, you can retail a piece of land, you can sell a finance a piece of land, you can split a piece of land, you can assemble pieces of land, you can option a piece of land, you can assign a piece of land, you can double close a piece of land, you can do all the things that you can do with houses, just without the house. So we didn't have to go, and the benefit of that is there's no tenants, no toilets, no termites, there's no mold, there's no contractors, there's no repairs, there's no midnight move-outs, there's no vandalism. It is just a much simpler way. And the best benefit is there's literally no competition. Because nobody does that.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I know very little about land flipping, so I was very excited to have you on here, and it was kind of a selfish reason I wanted to hear.
As does 99% of the real estate investment population. They don't know anything about land flipping.
Yeah, and I want to know everything about it. So,
all right, let's go.
You gave us kind of an overview of what it was for someone who hasn't heard of it. What do you think makes land flipping a lucrative investment?
All right, so great question. So multiple reasons. Reason number one is that there's more motivated sellers in land flipping in land than there are in houses. Because land in itself, once you own it for a long time, it doesn't cash flow naturally. It just sits there and it causes you a little bit maintenance. Now, if you live in the desert, it doesn't cost maintenance. But if you live in an area where it actually rains and weeds grows and it's in the city, then you actually have to maintain it and so on. But most importantly, it costs property taxes. Now, every property does. But if you have a rental house, the property taxes are covered by the rent. If you have just a piece of land sitting there, it's not covered by the rent. There's no rent. So people that own this property have to shell out property taxes every single year. And they bought these properties for many different reasons. One of them is that they eventually wanted to build a house on there. They wanted to put a cabin out there. They were expecting the city to come close by and the value go up. And perhaps the city decided to grow the other way for the last 20 years, right? So they are sick and tired of owning a piece of real estate that costs them money every year, that doesn't do anything for them in the moment, and they just don't want it anymore. So there's many more people in that world that decided that they just don't want it anymore than there is in the house flipping side. Also, there's many more free and clear properties out there. So you can't literally, if you have a big mortgage on a piece of land, you can't just give it away for pennies on the dollar. But if you own it free and clear and you paid it off 20 years ago and it's just been sitting there and bugging you, then you're just like, you know what? You develop that garage sale mentality. They're like, the bicycle costs $300, $30, take it. I want it out of the garage. Right? And with a couple of zeros behind it, it's exactly the same thing. Like we have just recently, one of our students bought a property that the person had bought in 2006 for over $100,000, and they sold it to them for $7,000.
Wow.
They're just like done. I'm reaching an age. I'm reaching a thing. I don't want to do it. Or they bought it because they wanted to move there, built a retirement home, but now their kids have grandkids, and they're like, I don't want to be away from those little ones, and I have this thing away, and there's so many different reasons. But bottom line is they're more motivated than house flippers, which means they're giving us a bigger discount, right? And with a bigger discount comes the ability to get into the business with less money. So our first deal, we literally bought for $400, and we sold it to the neighbor for $4,000. Now that wasn't a fortune, but it was 10 times our money. Right?
I'll take those returns.
Absolutely. Yeah, 1,000% return. So the other thing was when we went to, and that guy, the guy that sold it to us, was exactly that. He had just gotten through divorce. He kind of hated life a little bit. He wanted to get away. He moved out of Arizona where we live, where we happened to start, because back then we thought we had to go see properties, which is no longer the case. We haven't seen a property for 12 years anymore, or 13 years. So he just wanted to get garage sale mentality. He just wanted to get rid of everything that reminded him of his old life and just start freshly in Colorado, brand new. So we offered him $400 for the property, and he says, like, take it. Yeah, he probably would have accepted $200, but he took it. We went up there, we put a sign on there, and the neighbor comes across, and the next door neighbor buys it for $4,000. We bought properties for $1,800 and sold them for $86,000. And in the process of closing it, the property got reassessed from $10,000 to $60,000, and the tax bill got sent to the old owner still. So you think the old owner was upset that he just gave away a $60,000 property to us for $1,800? No, he wasn't. Actually, surprisingly, he wasn't, because he had made up his mind that he just doesn't want that thing anymore, no matter what it's worth. So bottom line, because of all these factors, we can get in for $1,800, $2,000, $4,000, money that most people can either have or can come upon. And then the market values are still 10 or 20 times higher. And then even if you sell it at half price, which is a smoking deal, you sell it very quickly, you make a nice profit. So you can make the same profits. To answer your question, it's easier to get into. There's more motivated sellers, and you can make the same or higher profits that you can make on houses because the margins are so big.
And the number of motivated sellers, it sounds to me like it's up there, because when they decided that they're done, they just want to wash their hands of the whole deal and just get out of it. So
as a result, when we, like, I know if the house flippers today, if a house flipper sends out direct mail, their response rates, it's typically below 1%. Like, I belong to a mastermind with like 150 other house flippers. I'm just the land guy in there, kind of like smirk, but a lot of them have even moved away from direct mail. We use a direct mail strategy, but we get a 4 to 15% response rate on our direct mail. Wow. So that means that is like a 10x factor or even 15x factor more than most of the house flippers get. Which goes to your point, there's more motivated sellers. And since nobody's in that industry, they call you and they haven't gotten a phone call or a letter from anyone else probably in 20 years in many cases.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
So Jack, this is kind of one of the reasons I'm so excited, like Larry said, to get into this conversation is because this just shows there's so many different ways in real estate to kind of attack it, right? So yes. You kind of covered a couple of the things, not having the tenants, termites, and toilets and things like that. But what are some of these other key differences for somebody who is maybe new to real estate and it only sees real estate as, maybe the rental with 20% down and going through a bank? What are some of these key differences in the land flipping side of things that they want to be cognizant of?
So when you mention the 20% down, so the first big difference is you'll never have to speak to a bank, because as a matter of fact, you can become the bank. So, and this is an extra really good feature. So because if you buy a lot of our deals, we do our deals in two ways. We either do wholesale, our favorite deals are done, like 90% are done one of these two ways. Way number one is wholesaling properties. So we buy them at 10 cents on the dollar, we sell them at 40 or 50 cents on the dollar, leave a huge amount of margin in for the next guy, but that's why they sell very quickly. The second way we sell them, and you can do that with houses too, and it's the exact same way. There's actually no difference there. Because you put them on a contract, you can assign the contract, you can do double closing of the contract. You actually don't need the money to buy that property. But in the second way is a very interesting and different way that we do these deals, is that we sell a lot of our properties with what's called seller financing, right? So in other words, we let's say we put a $40,000 property that we put on a contract for $6,000. So we buy it for $6,000. We go put it on the market for full market value, but we allow somebody to buy it with a $6,000 down payment. So if you look at that, you can literally do that as a double close. You can go to a title company, you can do it as a dry ABC close, where the buyer brings in their $6,000 or $7,000, let's say, and then use that to pay the seller. And you now have the property purchased and sold, but with installment sales, without almost taking any money out of your pocket. And now the guys start making $500 a month payments for the next 12 years. And that $500 is cash flow, just like it's in a rental property, but it's cash flow without any repairs, without any midnight move-outs, without any really hassles in there, without having to pay property taxes you collected in addition. So it's pure absolute profit that comes in every single time, every single month for the next 12 years. So that's a big distinction that you can do that. You can do seller financing with houses too, but typically you buy a house for $100,000 that's worth $150,000, you sell it for $150,000 with a $20,000 down payment, but somehow you still got to bridge that $80,000 gap here. And you do that with a hard money, with a lender and so on. We can eliminate all of that out of here and literally take deals where one of our students, Bruce, he bought a property for $1,100 and sold it with for $24,000 and got a $6,000 down payment. I mean, he's $5,000 in the plus, even after considering $3,000 or $4,000 a plus, even after considering closing costs. And now he's getting $400 a month for the next five years or so to pay that thing off. It's pure cash flow. It's pure beauty. That's probably one of the things. And then the other big distinguishing factor is that because it's land, neither do you have to go look at it, nor so you don't have to go look at it, and you don't actually have to ever arrange for anyone else to see it, because when you market it, you give them the GPS coordinates of the property and they put it in their phone and they just drive up to it. And then you don't have to arrange for the door to be opened, right? You don't have to arrange for the electricity to be on. You don't have to arrange for any of that because they can just show themselves around, which means that you can literally do this virtually from anywhere in the world. And we have students in South America and in Germany and in China that do this in the United States from over there. They haven't ever even been to the United States, some of them.
Nice. I gotta say, you essentially defeated like one of the biggest gripes that I hear about land is that you can't make it cash flow, right? It's just something that you got to speculate on and hope that it's worth more in the future. But you kind of take that and you found a way to generate cash flow out of it, which is phenomenal. One of the things I got to highlight on there, you never have to talk to a bank, you become the bank. I think that's an amazing concept, right? The seller financing, as far as you are now the bank, right? So you're the monopoly bank as far as you own the property, or they own the property, but you're getting the monthly installments. And if they default, what's the worst that can happen? You get that property back, right?
Exactly right. Exactly. And that, even though that's not our goal, it does occasionally happen, and then you double profit on it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get monthly installments, and then if you don't, you get the property back, and you repeat the process.
100% right. That's exactly how it goes. Yeah.
Now, a lot of our listeners are newbie investors. Is this something that you feel that they should be able to jump right out of being newbies into doing, or do you think they need to get their feet wet in other areas before and they can get some experience under the belt, or coming right out of the gate, they can do land flipping?
Now, obviously, I know I'm biased, right? But but I have a hard time thinking of a better strategy to get started for a newbie, because again, you don't have to learn. When you get into real estate, there's a lot to learn. The very last thing that I want somebody to learn, for example, we also do now apartment complex syndications. We take the money we make in land and we buy 150 unit apartment complexes. So when somebody 18 years ago would have presented me with an apartment complex opportunity, I would have been turned around and would have been screaming the other way. Mm-hmm. And that is because I didn't understand even the terminology of it. I didn't understand the concepts of it. I didn't understand how the calculations of it. I didn't understand anything. So it's the same thing with this versus other methods. Once we saw land flipping, we really understood that we basically don't need to understand much about real estate. You don't need to know what a 2x4 is, how much it costs to put drywall on a property or a roof or repair a kitchen or any of the things that you really can break your neck in a fix and flip. Like I have friends every friend that does fix and flips has lost tens of thousands of dollars in fix and flips in the past. on occasionally, not always, then they make it on other ones, but they've had deals where they lost a bunch of money. They say in the fix and flip world that if your first fix and flip, if you didn't lose money in your first fix and flip, you did everything right. Because there's so many unknowns that you're dealing with, all cost overruns, things that you don't think of. And in the land flipping world, you don't have to learn them in the first place. Because like, this is my office. This is from which we flip all our properties. I have Google Earth. I can see the property. I have Google Maps. I can take pictures of that, right? I have county websites. I can use the telephone and call the county and find out anything I need to find out. And yes, do I need to learn a few process steps and a few little things like how is it done in this state or the other state? But compared to houses, it's a fraction of what you need to learn, which is the perfect thing to learn for a beginning investor. Because you still learn real estate. And most importantly, you still build up your confidence and your capability. So we did the same thing for years. We only focused on land flipping, and only then did we start into going to improve property. We flipped some houses. We rehabbed some houses. We have a rental portfolio now, and then we jumped into the larger pieces. But I couldn't imagine having done that the other way around.
Awesome. Is there, so somebody getting started, is there a market cycle where land flipping tends to work best, or is it applicable in all market cycles? And then you talk about trying to find out how it works different in certain areas and certain cities. How does somebody, multifamily and real estate, there's certain factors to get down to your market. How does that differ for land flipping? Like what markets are good for land flipping?
Yeah, so the first part, if it's seasonal, or not just in the year it's seasonal, it's not. The only thing I want to say is that there's about a 2.5 week window time where it just everything slows down, and that is after Christmas till about until about January 10th. Because everyone is busy with family and hungover and getting sick and stuff like that there. But then literally after that, it starts taking off like a rocket ship again. And
yes.
Really, really seasonal. Now,
sorry, I meant like a market cycle. So yes, where we are
expanding then further to a market cycle. This works in all market cycles. So in the market, we have done this since 2002. So we have around the run-up 2007. It obviously worked like gangbusters. But then when the markets went down, it continued working. What happens when the market goes down is that you just got to change your offers. So we did cancel a bunch of offers that we made in 2007 when we saw the market shifting. We canceled a bunch of offers because we were offering a high price. Well, we're offering perhaps like on the upper end of our spectrum because we're expecting the sale price. But if the sale price goes down, your offer price needs to go down. So we immediately adjusted, readjusted, renegotiated, and continued doing deal all the way to the downturn, all the way into the bottom, and all the way up. What happens in this downturn is that you just need to buy cheaper and you sell cheaper. So your margins are smaller. So instead of making $30,000 deal, you might only make $15,000. But you can still do that. Instead of making 15, you made 8 or 10. So, but you still make money. And that is in the drastic downturn that we saw. That nobody expects such a drastic downturn to be repeated anytime soon. Right? So we are so that's not gonna so that's the answer is no. It works in every market cycle. And right now though, we're in a market cycle that it works even better than it worked in 2006. And we're not seeing crazy overvaluation. It's just is a market with low unemployment, high confidence. People are just buying like crazy and buying these properties like crazy. And the sellers will always sell for cheap because life and circumstances always change in their lives. Now, the second part of the question was, forgot that part.
How does a newbie determine what market to go into? Are there similar factors to, multifamily where, the job growth and economic, diversity and things like that? How do they decide which market?
What we like to do, so we like to focus on three kinds of properties and mainly of those two. Three kinds of, first is we like to be in the path of growth, right on the outside of bigger cities. So to your question, the easiest way to find them is just Google the 100 fastest growing cities in the United States. And not necessarily all go to number 1, but go to like number 9 and 12 and 17 and 34. They're still fast growing. And so we like to be around some bigger cities where there's enough buyers and where there's enough people moving into. And then if they're already, they're growing, then you go around them where properties are cheap enough, but where's the path where the growth is going towards. That's easy to find out with a simple Google search. The second kind of property we like to be in is in larger properties in rural areas. So the way we go about that is we use the same search. We look at the fastest growing areas or cities, and then we look at the bigger market. Let's say Atlanta, Georgia. We're big in Atlanta, Georgia, and we look around an hour to 2 hours to 1 to 3 hours driving distance from Atlanta, Georgia. What's around there that's nice, with its big acreage, but that's still attractive? And what do we find? The Smoky Mountains, for example. They're an hour away. There's lakes, there's hiking, there's potentially skiing, I don't know. There's large acreage. It's not all natural. It's not all state land. There's actually private lands. You can buy some stuff there. You can go over to North Carolina or to the Carolinas. It's still a few hours driving only. And there's great areas there. Plus, there's other cities close by. So it is great attractive for the people that want to go and just have a place on their own where they can go take their RV out there, their ATV, their dirt bikes, their bow and arrow, their guns, and just have some fun out there. And so there's a high demand for these properties, yet you can buy them for pennies on the dollar. So with that said, we don't do like cap rates and we don't do like employment and things like that too much. We look at it more like, where are people going to already? And then either be in the outskirts of that, or we go into the larger areas that are still within driving distance of those areas.
Nice. Awesome. Now, when you're doing land flipping, obviously there's different styles of land. You got residential, you've got commercial, you've got just the different types of land. Is there any specific land that you prefer flipping that makes it a little easier to flip, or? Well,
the one in the outskirts of town is always the easiest to flip. Of course, the easiest to flip is the infill lot. It also is a little bit harder to get. You have to send out more letters. And you get a lower response rate. That if you're in the city and like in a growing city area, and you want to have one of these 300 empty lots there's going to be some competition for those. There's going to have to write a bunch of letters for those. You have to write repeat letters and so on. But once you have one at a good price, the builder flies them like the next day, right? So, and at a $50,000, $100,000 profit, right? But the ones in the outskirts of town, those are the ones where really the best worlds meet each other, because they are attractive to both two kind of buyers or three kind of buyers. If it's really close by, they're still attractive to the builder or developer. If they're a little bit, if they're somewhat close by, they're attractive to what we call the financial investor. The financial investor is somebody who has just a bunch of money, perhaps pulled it out of the stock market, sees that the city's growing, and he can buy like this property. Let's say if he buys a 2-acre parcel from you right now for $35,000, which you have under contract for $5,000, and it's worth $50,000. But 10 years from now, when the city actually has grown there, it's worth $300,000. So he buys something for $35,000, which he knows is a good deal today. It's going to be a great deal down the road. So you have this buyer that buys those. He's going to buy them very quickly, particularly if you can show some in your marketing, some additional evidence that the market is growing that way. And in our courses, we show people how to do that. And then so now you have two buyers. And the third buyer is actually a future retiree. It's somebody that's kind of like realizes that, crap, if I retire in the next 10 years, I won't have enough money to live a dignified retirement. So they're buying our properties, often with seller financing, about 5, 10, 15 miles outside of the town, outside of where town ends, pay them off over the next 10 years. And then when they're ready to go retirement, they buy themselves a mobile home or build a small semi-manufactured home on there. And then they pay that thing off or have enough money to pay it off. And now they live on a free and clear house in a free and clear property and can live on Social Security and the rest of the savings and have a dignified retirement. So it combines three buyers, of which there's a lot of them out there. And therefore, these properties often move the fastest out there and provide really nice profits.
Awesome. All right, Jack, you sold me. I'm a new investor. I want to get into land flipping. How does somebody, I'd assume there's not as much educational resources out there as there probably are in the multifamily in the traditional real estate past. How does somebody get a mentor, get educated on land flipping?
Well, so we when we started showing that, and we created a home study course on it 11 years ago, and then we've redone it a couple of years ago, so it's updated, even though nothing really changed. But people were like, "It's 11 years old," or "It's 8 years old." It's like, yes, it works the same way today. So we created it, but we did an updated version with some of the more updated things, like how we sell them through the different platforms, the different websites. We usually use free websites to sell these properties through, like even on Facebook and so on. But then more and more people came to us and said, like, yeah, this is cool, but I still would like to have some coaching. So we offer coaching. So people can contact us. I can share the link or something later on, but they can go to our website. The first thing everyone should start with the overall home study course. That is a step-by-step A to Z home study course with all the steps in there. And then if they still need more hand-holding afterwards, or if they want to take it to a higher level, we have a lot of people that come into it. We have two kinds of people going into our coaching program. The first ones are the ones that are really starting from scratch, and they know they need some accountability or hand-holding. It depends. We have basically some people say, like, I know I'm a go-getter, but I need the help to make sure that I overcome certain hurdles as I get to them. Another person is like, I need the accountability factor. I need somebody that I know I need to show up with every single week, because our coaching is one-on-one coaching every single week, that I can talk to, and that I can help me get to the next step and the next step and the next step. And the other side of the other kind of coaching we offer is people who are already doing deals, but they managed to do like a deal or two a month, and they want to get to 10 deals a month. So we help them scale their business, because some of our coaches do 100 to 300 deals a year.
Nice.
Wow.
Very cool.
Now, when you have a piece of land under contract and you've got a buyer, what is usually the closing time for most deals? And do they close quickly? Does it take a little bit?
If you have typically when we put a property on a contract with a seller, and I know you're asking about the buyer, but if you put it on a contract with a seller, we put into the it's different thing than house flipping. We put in our contract that the close of escrow is up to 6 months down the road. Some of our students even put a year's close of escrow in there. Not because it takes so long to sell it, but if they get 40 contracts on a contract, or 40 deals on a contract, they don't even have the time to put them on the market so quickly. So it might take them a while to put them on the market. And so we like to give ourselves like 6 months. So you open escrow, you have them do the title search, make sure that you have marketable title. And assuming you do, the moment you have a buyer online and the buyer is ready, you just close on that escrow. The title company's ready. You can close in 3 to 5 days if you want. Average, I would think, takes about 2 weeks, because usually the buyer needs to get their funds together and their documentation together and their ducks in a row. We are usually ready for the moment we have the buyer, we do the closing. Or, of course, you can also do it what we have done early on and always on. We have actually bought these properties ourselves. If they only cost $500, you can afford to buy them and then sell them, and very quickly you have enough money in there to fund your own business. So, but the answer is, once the buyer is there shouldn't be anything that keeping you from finishing that purchase, assuming that the title is marketable. Of course, if all of a sudden, if you haven't sent, so the process is really get the deal under contract, send it to title, have them open escrow, have them all doing all the preparatory steps. So if there's a title issue, they can fix the title issue while you market the property. And then once you have the buyer found, you just do an assignment, the double closing, whatever it is, or you buy it and sell it 2 days later. But that transaction can take anywhere, like usually it's about a couple of weeks. So quickly.
And Jack, do you usually find the people that you're buying these pieces of land from are okay with putting that out potentially 6 months, or is it more of a case by case basis? And if they're uncomfortable with it, then to your point, some of them are pretty low cost to purchase. You just buy it and hold on to it, and then flip it when you find a buyer.
So the answer for that is pretty much yes. So in other words, what I mean is, it is 90% of them are okay with it. 10% have an issue. But the issue is not what you think. It's not that they think, oh, why do you need so much time? It's often an issue of like, hey, I'm going to go out of the country for the next 6 months, visit my daughter and who lives in Bali or whatever it is, so lives somewhere else. And so I need to close in the next 30 days, so otherwise this is not going to work, right? More reasons like that. than reasons of like, hey, what's going on? Why you need 6 months for that? If that comes up, you'd simply say, hey, we need 6 months because we don't know if there's any title issues. We're anticipating to close earlier. Well, that's the truth. I mean, the earlier days, when we started out, we gave people like 60, 90 days. And very often did we have to extend the closing date because there was a title issue. Perhaps they had, it was still in the name of their dad or something like that. And it needed some probate. It needed some other resolutions, some other things. All of that is stuff that the title company works on, but it takes time. So you want to have at least 3 months. And between 3 months and 6 months, there's really almost zero pushback.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I suppose with burned out landowners, you probably don't have the tenants. You don't have the tenants calling them, so there's maybe not as quite of a heightened urgency to get rid of it. But
and there's no competition. It's not like in the house flipping world. If you tell somebody, "Yeah, I'll do close of escrow in 6 months," they're like, "You're crazy! I meet somebody in an hour that's going to close it in 7 days."
Yeah.
Right. So we are just the opposite because we don't deal with the competition situation here.
Nice. So how are you guys finding most of your deals now? Is it all direct mail campaigns?
It's all direct mail. Now, could you go on Craigslist and just look for some properties and perhaps pick up a couple of cheap ones? Yes, but that's more like of a treasure hunt. We don't like to do a treasure hunt. We have developed a business that is consistently doable. And that once you honed in on your areas where you get really good responses and so on, then you send out 1,000 letters, you get 80 responses, you send 80 responses, you get 3 deals, each deal, it makes you anywhere $10,000, $15,000, right there is your $30,000 to $50,000 in profit for the month. And you just do that again. You want more deals, you want double your deals, you double your mailers, right? So it's a predictable cookie cutter system. So, and the best way to do that has been and always, I think, will be, is direct mail because, again, direct mail works unless there's a huge amount of competition. And in the housing world, direct mail gotten so bad that people would get 30 postcards a week and they wouldn't respond to any one of them. So everyone's response rate dropped so deep. But in our case, that's not the case, and it's not foreseeable for that to be ever the case.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm kind of curious about is when you're sending out the mailers and you get these responses, how do you go about valuing the property so you know so you're not overpaying for it? You want to know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have developed 5 different ways to value a property. The very simplest one is sold comps, just like houses. So if you have an acre in the outskirts of town, typically there's other properties like that available too. And if a few of them sold, that's your comp. If it's not available, you can operate based on listings. It's like, what's the listings? Because if the listings are listed with realtors, the realtors are not going to just decide to list one property 5 times the value. They want to sell their property and make a commission. So the realtors they're going to list it based on what they think the market value is, and that's usually fairly reliable, or at least you would discount about 20% of that and take that as a comparable value, and that has proven to be very, very reliable. And there's other ways. You can adjust by size. You can adjust by you can use the assessed value from the county in many areas as a kind of rule of thumb, because it's usually in a relationship to the market value. So we developed like 5 of those that are detailed, spelled out. But the thing is, the first time you do it, it might take you 45 minutes to figure out the property value of one property. After you do it in a while, it takes you 3 minutes to figure out the property value. Because and now after me, I've done over 4,000 deals. Michelle and we have done over 4,000 deals. Now we're like, you tell me a subdivision, I tell you what to offer because I know what's worth it. Because we've done so many deals in so many areas where I know exactly what properties are worth it because we know these places inside out, at least virtually.
Yeah, I think it took me about 45 days to figure out the value of my first multifamily property. So if a newbie can do this in 45 minutes, that's a good start.
And I don't doubt it. And I bought multifamily properties where 3 months after buying, I was still looked at and double checked the numbers and made sure that I wasn't wrong, right? Yeah. And I wasn't, but yeah, it's a completely different ballgame. Yeah.
All right, Jack, last question before we move on to the next subject. What type of improvements do you have to do this land? I think sometimes people think of buying land and they think of, well, I got to develop it and put in these roads and deal with the city. Like, do you have to do any improvements to these lands, or is it just a straight up flip?
It's a straight up flip. We don't do anything to this piece of land. We've never put a shovel into the piece of land. We never graded a road to their land. Absolutely nothing. I mean, untrue. One time we bought a property that had just done a percolation test, so they dug big holes into it. So we got and they left the holes in place afterwards. So we got a guy for $100 with a backhoe to fill up those holes. That's the only thing in over 4,000 deals we've done to a property. The only other thing we've done, we've taken properties and split them. And when you split them, depending on which state you're doing them, you might have to do a surveyor out there and things like that. Or in other areas, you don't. So, but we've done those a few times. But other than that, absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, it's one of our mantras that said, like, do not touch the property. We're not developers. This is not the $10 million piece of land where they put the new ballpark on. This is land in 3 areas, infill lots in the outskirts of town or big rural areas. It is what it is. We're buying them at a steep discount, the way we might, and we're passing the deal on, even if they're this deal on to another person at a discount, or we sell a financing with a convenient monthly payment and a down payment. Even if the property is landlocked, we go sell it to somebody else. We figure out what is it worth if it's not landlocked, because around it there's going to be some properties that are not landlocked, and then we basically market them and say, like, here, if you buy this property and you get the road to it, you are unlocking the extra $70,000 in value for it. But I'm not willing to do that because it's going to bog me down for the rest of the year to get this easement done. It's going to take lots of sleepless nights and lots of effort and lots of time to get that done, only to then make some more money on it. If I spent that time on doing 3 more deals, I've made that $75,000. And that's much less time invested. So there's this concept of velocity of money, that if you can flip your money very quickly and duplicate and triple your money, let's say every deal you triple your money, buy it for 5, sell it for 15, buy it for 5, do that again. Then if you do that, if you just focus on that, you'll end up making way more money than if instead taking one property and doing all this effort to then make it into a $75,000 deal.
Yes. All right. I said that was the last question, but I got one more on this before I move on to this forever cash philosophy that you got. How does one lose money in this? So I'm a newbie investor, and this sounds phenomenal, but like, what mistakes do I not need to make in order to, do I need to avoid so I don't lose money in this niche?
Yeah. So the only times we've ever lost money is when we, as they say, started believing our own press releases. In other words, when we started thinking that we were better than we actually are. In other words, once you have a property under contract, our process is such that you do a very, very superficial value analysis just to figure out what the values of the property early on, and you make your offer. Since you're only offering 5 to 25 cents on the dollar, you have a huge buffer in there that protects you from any mistakes. So if you did that right, then you're not losing money. But then the next step is that the moment you have it under contract, you dig deep on these properties, because our contract allows you to back out of the contract anytime for any reason. In other words, we can always back out of the contract if we find something that we don't like. So because of that, we don't do all the research up front. We do the research further back. And when we have that deal under contract, if you then do not do the research, you might overlook some stuff that ultimately turn that deal from a great deal into not such a great deal. And for example, we bought some properties in an area that we had already bought properties. And we bought a bunch of half-acre properties in that area. It's like, great, we paid $2,000 for them, sold them all for $10,000 each, made $8,000, great, 4 times our money, quadrupled our money, awesome. We got another batch, but these were quarter-acre properties, but in the same area. Where it's like, well, easy, let's just offer half the money for them and then just go do the same thing, not doing any extra research. What it turned out is that they had changed the zoning rules, and you can only build a house when you have half an acre. So even though they were only like half a mile away from the first batch of properties in the same general subdivisions, the other ones were half an acre, so they were valuable. The quarter acre ones were worth very little. So we ended up, even though we didn't pay for $1,000 for them, I think we paid $2,000 for those. We ended up selling 8 of them for $1,000 a piece, so we lost $1,000 a piece. Still, in the great scope of 4,000 deals, it is not a big deal. Yeah. But it could have easily been avoided if we just follow our proven steps. That is obviously in our training program.
Yeah, that's actually that's a great win ratio.
Oh yeah, it's a huge win ratio. That's just like it could have been 100% win ratio if he would have not been stupid and thought like, no, we know this stuff. We don't have to do this. So we know the area.
99.9 still good.
Every time you have a property under contract, you do the proper research because you just don't know.
Yep. Now the next, what Mike kind of alluded to it, what I want to jump to now is your forever cash financial philosophy. Very intriguing. I love the concept of forever cash. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, ultimately, we are cash flow investors. So I said that earlier. I think we got into land, even though land doesn't cash flow initially, we made it cash flow because our focus is on cash flow. But then we also realized, being about 6-7 years into this business, that the first bunch of notes that we had built up and cash flow that we got was starting to stop coming in because these notes were starting to get paid off. So we realized if we do a cash flip, we get paid once. And yes, we can do so many cash flips that we have millions and millions of dollars in the bank, and then we can probably outlive those millions of dollars. But the better way is cash flow. And that's when we started doing cash flow. And we call those one-time flips, we call this one-time cash. The second kind of the seller financing deals, we realized this is beautiful cash flow. And it's a tremendous, incredible stability that it brings to your life for the time that these notes last. But eventually they will end, or you have to redo them every 5 to 10 years. Because most notes only take 5 to 10 years at the price points that we sell these properties. So then we realized, okay, this is really amazing stuff, but it's what we call temporary cash. So the ultimate thing, if you really want to have what we call generational wealth, if you really want to have wealth that goes beyond your lifetime, your children's lifetime, and your children's children's lifetime, then really you want to have what's called forever cash. And forever cash, the best way that I can think of is still improved property. So ultimately, we are going for improved property, but now we're looking at we're making our money with one-time cash deals in land flipping, and we're making cash flow in temporary cash flipping, which allowed us to quit our jobs and go full-time and quintuple, 10x our business and our income. But then ultimately, the holy grail, the ultimate goal is to provide a cash flow stream that nobody can take away from you forever, and that will last for as long as you want it to last and as long as your heirs will want it to last. And that's basically what we are creating, and that's where multifamily comes in. That's where our portfolio of rental properties come in. That's where multifamily comes in. Because even if we might sell a property and then might reinvest it, we're always going to reinvest it into the other thing. But ultimately, money that you earn is supposed to be reinvested in yourself and in other things that it produces, and in cash flow assets that it produces more cash flow for you. And if you keep that in mind, and the funny thing is, all the aristocrats in Germany or in Europe, they teach it their kids for centuries. Like in my hometown next door, there's a little town where in Germany, where's the Baron of Bodman is his name. The Baron of Bodman has a little castle. It's more like a huge villa. Doesn't have like turrets on it, but it's a beautiful little castle with a beautiful garden around it, right in the middle of town. He owns about 70% of real estate in that town. He owns 80% of the farmland around it, and it's being produced. The farmland produces more cash flow for him, and the houses produce more cash flow for him, and he just manages his stuff. And then he gets old, and he passes on to his firstborn, and then he teaches them how to do that, and then he retires and he passes away, and the generation passes, and it goes on and on and on, and it has been going on for centuries. But those guys, they only mingle amongst themselves. I played in the band when I was little, when I was younger. I played the clarinet, and the guy next to me was an aristocrat, and he constantly told me how he would go to aristocratic balls, an aristocratic networking meeting, aristocratic things, and so on and so forth. So they teach that to themselves, but nobody teaches to the general public. We are being taught to make the money and buy the big screen TV, make the money and buy the new car, and replace the car every 2 years, and things like that. We're being taught to be consumers and burn off all the money we make. But the wealthy, you learn that you make the money in order to invest the money, and then you reinvest the money, and then ultimately, when you have enough from that, then that's when you can quit your job and the money pays for the lifestyle for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's such an important concept, man, especially when we're like you said, we're ingrained with this transactional concept where trade something for, our time for money or whatever have you. But, having this cash flow mentality of having this consistent stream of income come in is obviously something that we need the masses to know. And it's great that you're helping people get there with that forever cash philosophy.
Wonderful. Great. I'm glad it's helpful.
So let's, Larry, anything else before we wrap this thing up, man?
I'm just, if I had about 25 minutes to a half hour, I could process everything, but I'm just, there's a lot of information, and it was definitely worth listening to. So I do appreciate that. But no, I at this point, I've got 150 different questions, and I'm sure that our listeners will have them too. So I'd like to, have you back eventually so I can process.
Sure. Anytime, guys.
Yeah, Jack, this is awesome, man. You take a very niche part of real estate, which I think a lot of people had maybe I'm speaking for myself. I had some assumptions about being, non-cash flowing, things like that. And you kind of squashed them all, man. So very compelling.
Which is exactly the reason why. So we have so few people are in land flipping, because they all have that misconception in their mind, and it's being propagated even by the gurus out there. There's like, don't invest in land. And I was like sitting there chuckling, because it's like, yeah, do that, because it leaves more market up for us.
Yeah, stay out of that market.
But the reality is, those misconceptions are true for the big $20 million property that are going to put the ballpark on there. That's going to take 5 years to develop, extremely expensive, extremely risky, and so on. But it's not true for the $20, $30, $50, $100,000 properties that in the outskirts of town that you can just flip and make cash flow, where your buyer is such as somebody who has a dream of having their own piece of land somewhere out there that they can do something with. So so I'm glad I was able to turn one mind one at a time, right? One at a time.
Yeah. Hopefully, have many more converted after this thing airs. So, can you give the folks a little bit more info on where they can reach out to you, where they can find out more about you and your process and your programs?
Sure, absolutely. So the easiest way to find out more is to go to www.landprofitfun. Fun like having fun, F-U-N. landprofitfun.com. You can watch a webinar. You can watch some free videos and things like that. Then we also have a Facebook group that's called the Land Profit Generator Real Estate Group, Land Profit Generator Real Estate Group on Facebook. It's a free group where a lot of our successful students are hanging out, helping each other. And where literally deals are being posted almost every day, new deals, brand new deals, like first-time deals, where somebody says like, I just started 2 months ago, I got my first deal. And things like that just happens all the time. And then obviously I also have my own podcast called the Forever Cash Life Real Estate Podcast, because at the end of the day, all of that is designed to create a life that brings in cash forever and brings in the lifestyle and whatever that means for you, the life that you envision to live.
Awesome. Love it, man.
Yeah. Definitely got to have the listeners go over and subscribe to your podcast and check the Facebook group out and your website, because this is some seriously valuable information that you had given us. And, it's for newbies. So I definitely want everybody not to discount land flipping, which, I'm very glad that you were on today. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the real estate investing community, that was Mr. Jack Bosch on land flipping. And Larry, what the heck, man? That was awesome.
I'm telling you, Mike, the guy came in, he busted out a bunch of knowledge on us, and I'm still sitting here in awe because, who would have thought that empty lots, just pieces of land, could cash flow? I mean, that just goes against everything that you learn in a normal real estate transaction. And he came in and just turned my entire world upside down with it.
Yeah, he's like those guys from Mythbusters, man. He just busted myth after myth on land flipping, and
dude, he did.
People got to look into it if they haven't yet. And we're going to go into the call to action. And the call to action, Mr. Fierro, is going to be what?
Well, I want people to look at different methods of real estate transactions. What you and I had talked earlier, and you had come up with the fact that you shouldn't prejudge any method of real estate transaction. You should.
How did I come up with that, Larry?
Well, actually, Jack came up with it because I think you and I both kind of prejudged it a little bit to different degrees. And he came in and just went, "Oh, hold on, guys. back up.
Yeah, I prejudged the crap out of that last episode. I went into it thinking, well, land flipping, this is all transactional. There's no way to get cash flow out of it. And Jack put that to bed. So it really, the challenge, guys, if you've written off an investment strategy, a niche, and you're still looking for that plan of attack for your real estate investing, go back and truly vet some of these strategies that you may have written off because of things that you've heard but haven't validated. And I think what Jack shows is that there's tons of different ways to skin a cat and make money in real estate, and you shouldn't go off of just hearsay and secondhand knowledge. You should really investigate these strategies and see if there's ways to make it work, because proof's in the pudding, man. There's ways to cash flow on land flipping.
It really is. And you don't want to limit yourself. You don't want to think outside the box. You want to keep an open mind, and any opportunity that you get to make money, just don't discount it.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else for the listeners before we get on out of here? We'll get you back to the tables.
No, I'm going to head back down and see if I can win enough to pay for this trip.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Real Estate Marathon Podcast. See you next time.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast. If you found value in any of the content from this show, consider supporting us in the following ways. Subscribe to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast. Leave a rating and review. Continue the conversation with like-minded individuals on social media by heading over to the Real Estate Marathon Podcast Facebook group, or follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Real Estate Marathon Podcast.